Welcome back to the Deep 404. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the developments in Israel, the conflict in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas, and would like to start tonight with the very interesting footage of the Houthi boarding of the Galaxy Leader freighter in the Red Sea that occurred earlier this week. I'll just jump to this, so if you are not watching, you're just listening, if you can, I would watch, because this is pretty amazing footage. Let's just watch a little bit of this here. What appears to have happened is that a group of Houthi soldiers flying in a Russian Mil Mi-8 helicopter have managed to board the Galaxy Leader. The Galaxy Leader was, at the time that it was approached and boarded, not far from the port of Jeddah in the Red Sea, just off the coast of Saudi Arabia. The footage, as you see here, is really quite amazing, with the helicopter coming in, landing on board, and then the Houthi fighters disembarking from the helicopter and then taking control of the ship. I'll just leave that for now. But pretty amazing footage to watch, and it does go on to show them taking control of the ship, and then the ship being guided to where it has been taken, under control of a number of small boats, Houthi controlled boats, no doubt. Now, the Galaxy Leader is a vehicle carrier. It's 21 years old. It flies under the flag of the Bahamas, registered to the Isle of Man Galaxy Maritime Ltd. So it's a British-owned boat, and apparently it's Japanese-operated. Since this hijacking of this boat has occurred, there have been impacts to other shipping, and two other ships that have been managed by the same group, the Galaxy Maritime Ltd group. The Glovis Star and the Hermes Leader have diverted their routes now. The Yemeni Houthis are claiming that this boat was aligned with Israel, and that is why they have hijacked it. There's some interesting reporting. DD Geopolitics on their substack have done a little bit of digging. And what is interesting here is that reportedly where they were attacked, and let me again just go back here to our map for a moment. So on the map here, we've got Egypt up here, the Red Sea, Yemen down here, Jeddah is just here. So in the Red Sea area, somewhere around here, is where the Galaxy Leader was at the time that it was hijacked. It's a Russian Mil Mi-8 helicopter that was used, and they reportedly have a range of 600 kilometers or 370 miles. The distance from where the boat was boarded to the closest point of Yemen down here is just about 700 kilometers or 435 miles. So clearly the helicopter and the attack, well, the hijacking, wasn't launched directly from Yemen and must have been launched from somewhere within the Red Sea, somewhere obviously just off the coast of Saudi Arabia and somewhere relatively close to Jeddah, one would think. So either it's been launched from the ground somewhere, I suppose possibly could have been launched from Sudan as a possibility, or it has been launched from a boat in that area. But regardless of that, this is an embarrassing moment for the Saudi Arabian military. And it begs the question, how did a Yemeni helicopter flying near the port of Jeddah, which is the second largest Arab port, go undetected by the Saudi Arabian military? Because the boat has been hijacked. The reportedly, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has a military budget estimated at around $69 billion. And of that, 54 billion is provided by the US as military aid annually, along with training from the US and NATO allies. Saudi Arabia operates one of the largest air force and navies inside the region, and it has one of its fleets stationed at the King Faisal Naval Base near Jeddah. So it's an interesting situation, a very bold and brazen attack, if it has been orchestrated by the Yemenis without any assistance from Saudi Arabia. I'm not suggesting there has been any assistance from Saudi Arabia, but it does appear to, if that is not the case, to be an embarrassing moment for Saudi Arabia, having a boat hijacked just off the coast, just off the port of Jeddah, while in the area. Anyhow, so that's an interesting one. There is more going on in the area. Hezbollah, there is video footage which is out now on social media showing reportedly 2 Burkan missiles that were fired by Hezbollah and have reportedly struck Israel's Granite barracks on the northern border of Israel. So since the 7th of October and the Hamas attacks, the Hezbollah have been involved. There have been skirmishes with the Israeli IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and they haven't at this stage escalated out of control, but they are continuing to occur with rocket attacks on both sides of the border. The Hezbollah forces attacking Israeli military bases, Israel striking, in some cases, I think even perhaps up to 25 kilometres deep into southern Lebanon, going after Hezbollah positions, I imagine equipment, and perhaps just trying to signal to the Arab nations in the area that if they do decide to become involved in this conflict, that they can expect some severe missile reprisals from Israel. And speaking of missiles, Iran has released footage of the Fatah-1 hypersonic missile. In the video that has been released, it is reportedly seen launching and then striking. It's a test flight. The video of it striking is obviously it's traveling very quickly. You can sort of tell that by the quick one frame of the missile you glance as it strikes the ground. In the video that I saw, there wasn't anything in the area to give you an indication of scale of the size of the explosion that followed. Nevertheless, it did appear to be very powerful, but difficult to tell from that video just how powerful. But the power itself is perhaps not the threatening element of the hypersonic missile. What is of most concern to the United States and Israel is that at this time, Russia, China have active hypersonic missiles tested and capable of use. The Russians have the Kinjals, which are currently reportedly airborne at all times on some MiG-31s over the southern areas of the Black Sea. They have an approach speed of Mach 10, making them very, very difficult to shoot down. The speed of the Iranian Fatah-1, it's classed as a hypersonic, which generally means that it travels at least 5 times the speed of sound. I didn't find exact specifications for how quick the Fatah-1 can travel at top speed. But regardless, if you're getting up to the levels of above Mach 5 or getting up to things like the Kinjals at Mach 10, as you can imagine, they become very difficult for an air defense system to be able to target and intercept. Pure physics speed, as they are approaching at such speed, the time it takes for you to launch your missile into the air may not be sufficient for you to do so before the hypersonic has found its target. the Russian Kinjals too have a range of somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 kilometres. So it gives them a large area over which they can operate. The one in the Iranian video was ground launched. Again, I don't have details on it if it's capable of being air launched. I imagine that it would be, and that there would be work in achieving that capability if it's not already available. So Iran now moving on to the stage of those players who have hypersonic missiles. And as I said, the concern for the US and Israel is that the US does not yet have active hypersonic missiles. Of course, the Americans have many other capabilities, but the threat of the hypersonic missile being able to get past your air defense systems is something which the Americans are lacking at this stage. I believe they have a number of programs that are in the testing and development phases of hypersonic missiles, but there isn't yet a known release date of when those hypersonic missiles will become active, will be produced in numbers so that they are available for use, whereas the Kinjals are being produced by the Russians now, no doubt being produced at an increasing volume, given the edge they provide to the Russian Air Force over the United States in particular, or over NATO nations. The threat of a Kinjal is one that it could be an aircraft killer. That's the way that they could be used. So from the Black Sea, or perhaps closer in a conflict, they could be launched from a MiG-31 aimed at an aircraft carrier, and with their propensity or likelihood of being able to get through American air defense systems, there is a chance that they would be able to then strike an aircraft carrier, causing it significant damage and possibly sinking it. There were reports in May of this year by Ukrainian military that they had in one evening intercepted and shot down 6 Kinjal missiles. I don't believe that has ever been proven. It seems to me like an unlikely outcome. What was involved in terms of air defense in that incident was around Kiev, a Patriot missile system. What did happen in that incident was that the Patriot missile system was struck, damaged, if not destroyed, and this was admitted later by the American military, the Pentagon. So what appears to have happened was that a Kinjal got through and destroyed a Patriot missile system. The Ukrainian military claims that they destroyed 6 Kinjals that night. As I say, I've not seen that proved or borne out to be the case anywhere. And given what we have seen in terms of Russian air defense capability, we have seen them encounter NATO and US missiles of various types, Storm Shadows, the French Scalps, the Attackams. We've seen them encounter them. We've seen those missiles have some initial success, and then we see less and less and less as the S-400s, S-300s, S-350 Russian-built missile defense units learn and become capable of addressing those. Now, in the case of the Kinjals, I don't believe that the Patriot system had any experience with Kinjal missiles before. So for that reason, I feel it's unlikely that they would have shot down 6 of them in that one incident. So possible that at this stage there aren't any real world cases of a hypersonic missile, or at least let's say a Russian or Chinese hypersonic missile having been intercepted and destroyed. In Iraq, there have been US operations. One of these aircraft, the AC-130, the Ghost Rider. I believe these are the big brothers of the Spookies, which have operated for the United States in the past. Interestingly, a flight log came out on Twitter this morning for one of these AC-130s over Iraq, showing it performing the signature flight patterns that you would expect from this type of craft, given the way that they operate, what they do, and as you may have seen in the image I had on the screen there, the monstrous 105mm cannon that hangs out the side of them, the port side of them. They fly, they target a ground-based target, and then they circle around banking. So as they bank around, they keep the cannon. They've got a 30mm cannon, and then they've got a 105mm cannon, and they keep them trained on the target. It is thought that in this case it may have been a crew error and they hadn't turned their transponder off, and that's why this flight log was available. The person, open source intelligence person who posted the tweet that I saw about this, claimed it to be very unusual to see this sort of flight log from what appeared to be a live sortie by the Americans. But the flight log, as you see, it's like over a map, and you see a path tracked out, and there were numerous, it was following along what looked like perhaps a roadway, numerous circle type paths where clearly the 130, the Ghost Rider, had been identifying targets and then was banking around them and firing its cannons at them. That cannon is huge. For a plane, it's a 105mm cannon. It can fire at 10 rounds per minute. To give you an idea of just how big that is, some of the original M1 Abrams tanks from the Gulf War were equipped with 105mm cannons. So it's effectively a flying tank is what you've got shooting at you if one of these is targeting you. There is footage, of course, of them showing the 30mm cannon and it firing traces at night time with just a red line coming down from these planes towards the ground. But interestingly enough, in reporting from just a month or so ago, there is talk now that the 105mm cannon may actually be retired from these Ghost Riders. There is ongoing conflict in Iraq with Islamic resistance groups targeting American bases. One of the bases, the Ain al-Assad in western Iraq, was attacked again. Now, there have been reports over the last 2 weeks or so of American casualties, reports of some being killed. Now, these haven't been confirmed, but there have been some reports that these attacks have left some American servicemen dead. I can't confirm that. I'm just reporting that there have been some channels, and some which are generally quite reliable, reporting that they believe this has been the case. There has been some reporting from Islamic resistance groups. They also claim that in some of their strikes there have been American deaths caused by those strikes on those bases. Today I saw some reporting from the Americans indicating that there were some injuries to some of their servicemen, but they weren't confirming that anyone had been killed there. In Israel itself, now Israel has revised down in reporting the number of Israelis reportedly killed in the Hamas attacks. The number has been revised down by quite a bit. I believe the number may have been revised down as much as 200. And this is reportedly due to the fact that many of the bodies that were found in the first day of the attack were thought to be Israeli civilians. In fact, Israel has now confirmed that a number of them were not. They were, in fact, Hamas fighters. Some concern has been raised about this coming out now because it is believed that some of the original footage that was shown of bodies having been incinerated in vehicles, and while the Israeli Defense Forces and government were claiming that these were civilians which had been incinerated by Hamas fighters, they may have in some cases actually have been Hamas fighters and not Israelis who had been killed and incinerated by the Israeli, the Air Force, the helicopter gunships. Now, there is another side to this announcement, and the fact that there was confusion, it seems, on the number of Hamas fighters dead and the number of Israeli civilians killed is because around the rave on the Hamas on the rave around the border with Gaza, that the bodies were mixed together, and there is on social media channels now reports, and this seems to be perhaps backed up by Mark Regev, who's a former Israeli ambassador to the UK, and Israeli reserve pilot Colonel Nof Erez. Nof Erez speaks about the fact that there would have been confusion, that they were seeing lots of people running around near the border they thought were likely Hamas fighters, and that it may in fact have been a mixture of Israeli civilians and Hamas fighters, and that the gunships, in their attempt to engage Hamas fighters, may have also engaged their own countrymen and women, and may have been responsible for the deaths of Israeli civilians in that gunship attack, which appeared to have left multiple cars burnt and people killed from gunfire and from being incinerated in the vehicles. So very very troubling news if that is the case, that there were Israeli civilians killed by their own defense forces in that skirmish. I'm not experienced militarily to have ever been in that position of commanding a gunship and making decisions as to who and what to fire at in that situation. So I can't really speak about that other than to say that the whole affair itself, if it is correct, is obviously terrible and very, very sad for the people, the civilians involved, and for their families, if this is the ultimate cause of their death. Right, just I get one last little thing to in South Africa, and this is just showing, just because we've been talking about this, the growing perhaps lack of support for Israel's continued bombing campaign. Now, Israel and Hamas have agreed to a short pause in fighting to allow for prisoners to be released, and so we will see how that goes, how that proceeds, and how successful that is. But there is at least some pause that's been agreed to. But the ongoing Israeli bombardment of the Gaza Strip is leading to a growing cry in Western nations, in the south, the southern hemisphere as well, that this needs to stop. And South Africa, the parliament has voted in favour of shutting down the Israeli embassy, expelling the Israeli ambassador, and severing relations with the nation of Israel, which they consider to be a Zionist occupying force. So, again, this is just a demonstration of how I've said before, and many people have said this. Douglas McGregor sums this up very well, that in some respects he feels that the US needs to be playing a larger role to protect Israel from itself, because it may in effect be walking itself down the path to annihilation if it continues to attack Gaza, the civilian population in Gaza, and the world, the Arab and Muslim nations, and even Western nations, European nations, grow weary of this and feel that it's unacceptable. If that point is reached, then Israel may find themselves either beginning to lose support from some of their traditional support partners, or they may find themselves facing a wider conflict than one just with Hamas. Douglas McGregor did have a very good point on a video that I listened to him speaking on today, where he said that he feels that perhaps what should happen here to try to calm the situation down is that the American administration should speak to Prime Minister Netanyahu and suggest that if Israel doesn't slow down and stop its bombing campaign and take a different approach to addressing Hamas, that the Americans would withdraw their carrier fleets from the area. So there are two there at the moment, the Gerald Ford, which is in the Eastern Mediterranean, and the Eisenhower, I believe, which I think is now parked itself off the coast of Oman, but that was yesterday. I heard that it may have moved from there. And I understand his point there. If the American president were to say that to Benjamin Netanyahu, that if you don't change tack, we will pull out of here, then suddenly Israel would become far more isolated in the area. Of course, the obvious retort to that is, well, if you pull out, that will be seen as weakness, and we will then be overrun by the Arab nations because they'll know that you're not going to support us. So I don't think this will happen, but I do understand the logic of trying to find a way to calm down what's going on there at the moment and to save more people from being killed. All right, that's it for this one tonight. I hope you're enjoying the channel. If you haven't already subscribed and you enjoy it, please do subscribe. Share with people who you think would enjoy the channel, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.